The Frog Went A-Traveling. Russian Folktale. Once upon a time there lived a frog. She inhabited a swamp, went after mosquitoes and other tiny creatures, and in the spring she croaked loudly together with her frog friends. And this is the way she would have peacefully lived on if, of course, a stork did not gobble her up in the meantime. But something unusual happened. One day she was sitting on a knot of a tree stump that jutted out of the water, enjoying a warm drizzle. My, what lovely wet weather we're having today, she thought. What a delight it is to be alive in this fine world. The drizzle fell gently on the frog's shiny little back. The drops ran down her tummy and her fat little legs, and this was wonderfully pleasant. So pleasant that she almost croaked. But fortunately, she remembered that it was already fall, and that in the fall frogs did not croak. This was done only in the spring. To croak in the wrong season of the year would be most undignified. So she kept quiet and continued to enjoy herself. Suddenly, the frog heard a thin whistling sound. There is a certain breed of ducks who make this kind of sound when they are in flight. As their wings cut the air, they make the sound of a whistled song. Phew, 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 one hears as a flock of these ducks soars high in the sky. They fly so high that you can't even see them. This time, flying in a semicircle, the ducks came down and sat in the very same swamp where the frog made her home. Quack, quack, one of them said. We still have far to go. We had better stop and eat. The frog hid herself at once. She knew that the ducks would not make a meal out of her, for she was too large and too fat for that. But to be quite safe, she dived under the tree stump. But after giving the matter a little more thought, she decided to raise her head out of the water and watch the ducks. She was very curious to know where the ducks were going. Quack, quack, another duck said. Brr, it's getting cold. Let's hurry south, let's hurry south. And all the other ducks quacked in agreement. Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen ducks, the frog made bold to say. But what is this south to which you are flying? Please forgive me for this interruption. The ducks surrounded the frog. At first, they felt like eating her up. But each duck decided that the frog was too big and would stick in the throat. Then they began to quack loudly, flapping their wings. It's good in the south. It's warm there now. There are such warm swamps. And what worms! It's perfectly lovely in the south. They quacked so loudly that the frog thought she'd get deaf from it. When she finally got them to quiet down, she asked one of them, a duck who was fatter than the others and seemed more wise, what was south? And when the frog heard all about it, she was enchanted, but asked just the same, because she was a careful frog, but are there many mosquitoes and other insects there? Oh, clouds of them, the wise fat duck answered. Croak! The frog croaked and looked around at once to make sure that none of the other frogs heard her do this out of season. She just couldn't resist croaking at least once. "Take me with you," she said to the ducks. "You surprise me," exclaimed the wise fat duck. "How can we take you with us? You have no wings." "When are you starting out again?" the frog asked. "Soon, soon," the ducks screamed. "Quack, quack, quack, quack. It's cold here. To the south, to the south." "Allow me to think for just 5 minutes," said the frog. "I'll be back very soon. I'm sure I can think of something." The frog leaped into the water from the stump onto which she had climbed again, and dived to the bottom of the swamp, there to think undisturbed. 5 minutes passed, and the ducks were about to fly off, when the frog appeared again. Her face was beaming as only a frog's face can beam. "I thought of something. I have an idea," she announced. "Let 2 of you hold the end of a twig in your beaks. I'll hang on to it in the middle with my mouth. You'll fly, and I'll ride. If you don't quack, and I don't croak, all will go well." The ducks saw little pleasure in dragging a heavy frog for 3,000 miles in complete silence. But they were so impressed with the frog's cleverness that they all agreed to take her along. They decided to take turns and change conductors every 2 hours. And since there were ducks in this flock almost without count, and only 1 frog to transport, it wasn't going to be too much work for any single duck. So they found a strong twig. 2 of the ducks raised it in their beaks. The frog leaped up and grabbed the middle of it with her mouth, and off they went. The frog almost lost her breath from fright as they flew higher and higher, especially since the ducks didn't fly smoothly and jerked the twig. The poor frog swayed in the air like a clown on a trapeze. She clamped the twig as tightly as she could in her jaw, so as not to lose hold of it and be hurled to the ground. However, she soon got used to it all, and even began to look around. Fields, meadows, rivers, and mountains sped by under her. It was hard for her to get a good look at these places because she was facing forward, but she managed to see some of the landscape and was happy and proud that she was taking such an unusual journey. "That was pretty clever of me," she thought. And the other ducks followed the pair in front who were carrying the frog, and they screamed and praised her. "What a clever one is our frog," they said. "There are few who are that clever even among us ducks." The frog could barely resist thanking them, but remembering that if she opened her mouth to speak, she would drop from the terrible height, she held on to the twig even more tightly and decided to be patient and silent. All day long the frog hung on this way. The ducks took turns carrying her, changing drivers in mid-air. This was very scary for the frog, and she nearly screamed with fright several times. In the evening, they would stop for a rest in some swamp, and at dawn they would continue their journey. After the first day, the frog rode facing backward in order to see better the places they flew over. They passed harvested fields, golden forests, and meadows full of haystacks. From the villages they could hear the sound of people's voices and the noise of threshing. The peasants looked up at the flock of ducks and, noticing that they were carrying something, pointed and made some remarks. The frog wished they were flying nearer to the ground so that she could show off and hear what the villagers were saying about her. Next time they stopped for a rest, she said, "Couldn't we fly a little lower? I get so dizzy from flying so high, and I'm afraid that I'll fall if I get sick to my stomach." And the kind ducks promised that they would fly lower. Next day they flew so low that they could hear every word the villagers were saying. "Look, look!" some peasant children cried in one village. "The ducks are carrying a frog." The frog heard this, and her heart leaped with pride. "Look, look!" some grown-ups cried in another village. "What a miracle! I wonder if they realize that it was I who thought of it, and not the ducks," the frog thought. "Look, look!" the people cried in a third village. "What a sight! Who could have thought of such a clever trick?" The frog now lost all self-control, and, forgetting to be careful, cried with all her might, "I did! I did!" And saying this, she lost hold of the twig and somersaulted down toward the earth. The ducks yelled loudly. One of them tried to catch the falling frog in mid-air, but missed. The frog was coming down fast. Luckily, she fell into a muddy pond on the edge of the village. The frog quickly came up to the surface and again screamed as loudly as she could, "I did! I thought of it!" But there was no one there to hear her. Frightened by the sudden splash when the frog fell into the water, the other frogs hid beneath it. When they came up again, they stared at the newcomer, wondering who she was. And the frog told them the amazing story of how all her life she tried to think of a new way of traveling, and how she at last invented travel by ducks. She told them that she had her own ducks who carried her wherever and whenever she wished to go, and that she had traveled this way to the south, where it was very pleasant, and where there were wonderful warm swamps and lots of insects of all kinds. "I came here to see how you live," she added. "I think I might stay with you until the spring, when my ducks, to whom I gave a vacation, will return." But, of course, the ducks never came back. They thought that the frog had been killed in the fall, and they felt very sorry for her.